Okay, welcome everybody. Good morning. We'll start now. As is our custom, I hit mute, muted everybody, and every few minutes we'll open up the discussion if anybody wants to share a comment or question, etc. Um, so just an introduction or two before we start. First of all, to talk about the Sfirot, the soul powers, the divine attributes, and how they reflect in the human soul is something that is relevant all year round. It's one of the principles of the Kabbalah. It's very relevant in Hasidic philosophy and how personal growth, etc. But it's especially relevant on this time of the year because we know that after Passover, we count 7 weeks between Passover and Shavuot, the holiday of the giving of the Torah. That's 7 weeks, 49 days, and we count as preparation for the giving of the Torah. The Kabbalists explain that the reason why we count 7 weeks and 49 days is because every person has 7 general emotional attributes, and we want to refine those 7 attributes and improve those 7 attributes. And the way it's done is that every week we focus on one divine attribute, and within that week, every attribute includes all 7. That's another discussion. I don't think we're going to get into that today, but every attribute includes all 7, and therefore every day has a general theme. Every week, I should say, has a general theme. And every day of the week has a specific theme within that general theme. So let's say, for example, week 1 is kindness. So day 1 is the kindness of kindness. Day 2 is the severity of kindness, etc., etc. So if we have time, we will discuss all 49 variations, but we're going to hopefully focus on 7 over the next 3 days. I hope we can squeeze all that information in, but that's just to give the general overview. If you want to further study, so there are resources on Chabad.org and elsewhere that talk about the daily meditation and the daily sphere of every single day, and they try to apply it to one's life. There's a good book by Simon Jacobson on this. It's also, I believe it's available on Chabad.org. So all that information is out there, but we're going to try to stay general. So that's introduction number 1, to think about the time that we're discussing this. We're discussing this during the 7 weeks of preparation for the giving of the Torah. Every week we're supposed to focus on one specific soul power. We call it Sephira, which means an attribute. It means a soul power. Okay, so that's introduction number 1. Introduction number 2. God created the world in 7 days. Why 7 days? 6 days plus Shabbat. There's 7 days of creation. Why 7? Why not 1? Why not 50? Why not 15 billion? Why 7? So the Kabbalists explain that when you say there are 7 days, it's because every day there is an expression of one of the divine attributes, one of the 7 divine attributes. And Sunday, the first attribute of kindness shines, and therefore the creations of Sunday are related to kindness. Monday, there's the second one, which is strength, which is Gevurah, which is discipline, as we will explain, and therefore the creations of Monday express that energy. So the reason why there are 7 days of creation is because there are 7 divine expressions of the divine light. Now, this is not God. God is not 7, God is 1, but there are 7 general ways where God expresses himself, and they express themselves in the 7 days of creation. So God has 7 attributes. Now, we know that the human being was created in the image of God, right? The Torah says that God created man in his image. It's not so clear what does it mean in God's image. God doesn't have an image. So there are various interpretations, but one of the Kabbalistic interpretations is that just like God has 7 attributes, the human being also has 7 attributes. The human being's attributes are a mirror to the divine attributes. And therefore, what we're going to try to do is spend a few minutes on the attributes, the way the Kabbalah explains them within God, and then we'll try to explain how those same attributes are mirrored and reflected within the human being, because we are really a mirror, we're mirroring the divine attributes. So that is another detail that we have to talk about at first. One more point, that you may have heard that there are 10 divine attributes, which is true. We're not going to talk about the first 3. The first 3, the Kabbalah refers to as the intellectual attributes. The last 7 are the emotional attributes. God creates the world with the emotional attributes. We're going to focus on the 7 emotional attributes. Again, the theme of every week between Passover and Shavuot reflects one of those attributes. And that's why we're focusing on those. If we had more time, or maybe at another time, we'll focus on the first 3 as well. So this is the introduction to our journey, and now we're just about ready to begin. So the easiest way to do it is to think about the Sefirot in pairs of 3, and that's why I think the first day we'll focus on Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, which is kindness, strength, and beauty. We'll explain what that means. And when we understand them as a unit, we understand them as packages of 3, they're much easier to relate to, and that's what we're going to begin. So the first thing, just to ground this a little bit, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to read from a paragraph or 2 from a book. It's a small little booklet, but it's a good booklet. It's called The Mystical Concepts in Hasidism. And it's printed in the back of the English Tanya. It's authored by a great rabbi, Rabbi Emanuel Shachat. I see Chana's on the phone. I think that Rabbi Emanuel Shachat stayed at your house, no? Years ago? Yes, he stayed at your house years ago. So he was a great scholar and very sharp man. And he wrote a little booklet full of the basic concepts of Hasidism. It's a great book to have. I don't have it, but it's available online. For free, that is. So I'm going to read just a paragraph or 2, the way he describes it, and he's describing those attributes, the way they express themselves within God, within Hashem, and then we'll try to make it a little bit more relevant, thinking about it within the human being. So we begin with the first one, which is, again, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, which is kindness, strength, and beauty, and we'll try to explain what that means, but first I'm just going to read. Here we go. Chesed means kindness, in a sense of absolute, gratuitous, and unlimited benevolence. It is the very crystallization of the disposition to bestow good and kindness for the very sake of kindness, regardless of the merits of the recipient. So what is Chesed? Chesed is not somebody that wants to go and give to people who are deserving. You know, you have your child comes home from school, and the child gets 100 on the test, and you say, you got 100 on your test, I'm going to go buy you a new Porsche. That's not Chesed, because Chesed is giving benevolence to everybody, unlimited, in the sense that it's not tailored to what the person is deserving. A person has within themselves, also God, has within themselves the soul power. He wants to give. He wants to give regardless of whether or not the person is deserving. That's Chesed within Hashem. That is a very important attribute to creation. Of course, creation is all about God giving life, giving sustenance to everybody. Again, we'll read it within God, and then we'll think about it within the person. So that's Chesed, that's kindness. Now, Gevurah. Gevurah means strength or might. So I'm going to read one paragraph about Gevurah. Gevurah means might or power in a sense of severity. It is the attribute of din, law and judgment. Din demands that chesed be distributed justly, i.e. in proportion to the prospective recipient's merits, and not in boundless, gratuitous fashion. Thus, it is the principle that seeks to control, limit, and restrain. So if chesed demands just give to everybody, Gevurah is more judgmental. Gevurah wants to restrain the flow of chesed, the flow of kindness, and the strength says we're going to limit and channel the kindness to the places to the people and places who deserve it, and also limit it to the degree of how much the person is deserving. The Kabbalah further says that Chesed is the right side and Gevurah is the left side within the human body, but it's also in the spiritual sense. Chesed, the right side, it represents the person flowing outward. A person wants to give. And then Gevurah is the opposite feeling. You want to hold back. You want to restrain. When you think to yourself, if you're sitting in quarantine and your child asks you, can I have a treat? And if your first inclination is to say, why would I give you the treat? You did nothing to deserve it. If that's your inclination, that is, you're experiencing the emotional trait of Gevurah. Gevurah means, yes, I want to give, but I want to limit the flow of energy to the person to the person and the circumstance who deserves it. So I have this conflict. I have my right side is the desire to give. My left side is the desire to hold back, to discipline, and only give chesed, only give kindness to the people and places who deserve it. So that would create some degree of inner conflict between the opposing forces of the right side and the left side. And therefore, there's a third element which we're going to discuss today, and that's in the center. That's in the center. That's called Tiferet, beauty. And I see some artists on the call right now. So the Kabbalistic definition of beauty is blending. By definition, say the Kabbalists, one color is not beautiful, at least not what the Kabbalists call beauty. Beauty is the sense that you get from blending various perspectives of various colors together. So therefore, the third and middle attribute, or soul power, is called beauty, because even though it's not necessarily beauty, it's really compassion, as we will discuss. But we call it beauty because it allows for the blending of the right side and the left side. And again, I'm going to read one more paragraph from the book, The Mystical Concepts in Hasidism. And after we discuss that, we'll try to make it more practical within our life and within our day-to-day experience. So Tiferet, like I said, is beauty, and beauty somehow represents the blending of the right side, the chesed, the desire to give in an unlimited way, and Gevurah, the desire to hold back and to discipline and to limit the people to the amount and the direction where our love, where our kindness will flow. So what is Tiferet? Tiferet is beauty. It harmonizes and blends the free outpouring from Chesed with the severe tzimtzum of Gevurah. Tzimtzum is contraction. It blends them in such a way that Chesed will still issue forth, though limited by Gevurah, so as to make the Chesed endurable, i.e., that the creatures may continue to exist even while benefiting from Chesed. Tiferet, therefore, is not an equal mixture, but tends toward Chesed. Okay, within God. If God gave you all his energy, you would literally explode. In other words, you would just cease to exist because there's too much energy, you wouldn't be able to contain it. So God's chesed cannot create on its own. So we need gevurah, we need restraint. God has to hold back some of his flow of energy. And then Tiferet compassion, or the beauty, will blend the desire to give and the desire to restrict, and together those two will blend to form the concept of what we call beauty and compassion, which is the person could receive the limited flow. These are how the three sefirot play out within Hashem, within the divine creator. And so again, and now we'll move on to explain how this is reflected within the human soul. Maybe that will be a little bit more practical, but we have to start from the beginning. So we just start with the way this is within God. So to summarize, the first soul powers on the right side is chesed, is unlimited giving. You're just a person who gives, no matter what, no matter who, no matter whether or not the person is deserving of receiving this. By the way, part of the problem is you're also not tailoring your giving to the person. So your child comes to you and asks you a question, and instead of limiting your knowledge and tailoring it to the amount that the child can understand, instead you just download and you just give all the information way beyond the child's capacity to understand. If you do so, you're giving chesed, but it's unbridled chesed. It's not limited. It's not focused, and therefore ultimately the child will not receive much because the child will be overwhelmed. On the other hand, Gevurah so that's the right hand. The left hand is the capacity and the desire to hold back and only give to the person who is deserving, and only give a little bit to the amount, however much the person deserves. And so it's the opposite flow. If chesed is flowing outward, Gevurah, strength, wants to hold back, wants to restrain. You know, sometimes the child does homework and there's two parents, and the child says, I don't know this math problem. So one parent is the first initial urge is to go and solve the problem for the child. And the other parent's initial urge is to say, figure it out on your own. Who's right is another question. But these are two different soul powers. One is the desire to give, and one is the desire to hold back, the discipline to make the person earn it on their own. Now, there's a healthy blend, which is Tiferet, which we're going to define as beauty, but we'll see later is also the concept of compassion. So I hope this is somewhat understood. Maybe it'll be best to open up the floor for a question or two, and then we'll move to thinking about how this applies within the human being. So I am unmuting. If anybody wants to share a comment, now is the time. Otherwise,
but not a nice one. Some people get sick. Some people get friendly.
Okay.
Rabbi, you said at the...
I made this.
Oh, no, I made another.
Is somebody else asking a question?
No, I
Go
made
ahead.
You said at the outset that there was a correlation between the 7 days of creation and the 7 attributes. Is there a direct correlation between each attribute? For example, Chesed is a particular day.
Yes, it is Sunday.
Andy, can you hear me? I can't hear you. Andy?
Now I can hear you.
Oh, yes. So there is a direct attribute between the day of the week and that creation. I don't think we have time to go into it today. But yes, Chesed, first Sunday is Chesed, outpouring of energy. That's why if you look at the story, there is light. Light is the capacity to just spread and expand without limits. Day 2 is there's already separation. There's heaven, there's earth, there's discrimination, you're making differences. The key word is vayavdel, God separated, God differentiated. Differentiation comes from the left side. The person who's giving to everybody doesn't know what differentiation means. He doesn't understand that kindness should not be distributed to everybody at all times. So the capacity to differentiate, which is day 2, is Gevurah, et cetera, et cetera. Have we had the time, we can play out how all the various sfirot fit the 7 days correspond to the 7 days of the week. Indeed.
Thank you.
Rabbi, any significance of somebody being a righty or a lefty?
Not necessarily, because it's actually interesting that in Talmudic language, a lefty is somebody whose right is on the left side. In other words, so it happens to be your right is on your left side, not you. The person's right is on the left side, but it doesn't mean it's still within Hashem, within the Kabbalah. The right represents giving. Now it happens to be that my body, the giving side, is on the left side. I pitch from my right. I pitch from my left side, but it's still the energy of the right side. You see what I'm saying? Right represents stronger. Right represents so if I'm a lefty, then my left side is stronger. So my left side becomes my right side. Nothing wrong with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's see if I can figure out this technology here and figure out what I'm doing. So I know I'm on this call, I think, but I don't know where I am. So give me just a moment, see if I can figure this out. I apologize. Oh, wonderful. Okay, let's continue a little bit and think about how these concepts are reflected within the human soul and what it means to us and how this helps us in our life. And more importantly, how we have to think about this. I guess now we're in week 2. We want to focus on restraint, on Gevurah, on strength, and then the next week on blending, et cetera, et cetera. So if we're going to end on time, we don't have that much time left, but I'll try to do as much as I can. So let's think about chesed. Let's think about giving. Giving is flowing outward. Now, because these are general emotions, each one has a whole family of related feelings. So part of the desire to flow outward is really the desire for love, to give love and to receive love. If you think about it, what is the definition of love? So there are different definitions, but one definition that we have in Judaism is that the love has the numerical value of 13. If you take the letters of the Hebrew word ahava, which is aleph 1, hey 5, bet 2, and hey 5, you get to 13. And the other word that has the numerical value of 13 is the word echad, oneness. So when I feel a desire to love, what I really want to feel, I really want to feel one with the other person, with the person whom I love, or their experience that I love, or the thing that I love. I want to feel love. I want to feel one. And the drive to feel one is very deep within the human soul and within the universe, because ultimately God is one, and there's a certain oneness that surrounds the entire earth. And the soul has a deep feeling to want to transcend itself and become one with something outside of it. So love is giving. I want to give you because I want to draw close to you, because I feel one with you. And that's love, and that's a very powerful emotion, probably the most powerful emotion, or at least arguably one of the two most powerful emotions. Now, what does it mean to think about our love? Think about our love and try to refine the love during the first week of the Omer, is a person has the time to think about where they choose to direct their love to. I want to become one. What do I want to become one with? Do I want to become one with something positive or negative? You know, there are a lot of negative things that happen in the world that are a result of a very powerful urge to become one. A lot of addiction is a desire to become one with something negative. So the first thing we need to know is to be aware that when I love something, I'm literally trying to become one with that. Okay, that's step number one. If you think about strength, and strength is very important in the modern world, because strength is, at least what we call strength, Gevurah, discipline, or if Chesed, if kindness is love, then Gevurah, then strength is much more like awe, to be in awe of somebody else. Or in simple English, it's to respect the other person. And in the West, the concept of respect is severely underemphasized. And we think that in other words, you read popular culture, you think about what is a relationship, what does a relationship need? A relationship needs oneness. I have to want to become one with you. And that's the way we grow up thinking. And therefore we go into a relationship understanding the value of love, of becoming one. But then a lot of problems break out, because what happens is right after the honeymoon is over, either literally or figuratively, it could take 1 month, it could take a year, it could take 80 years, it doesn't matter. But after the honeymoon is over, I discover that, you know something, we're not really one. I think different than you. You have a different perspective than me. And therefore the love is challenged. The love, the desire to be one is challenged because I don't see myself as one with you. So now either I can ignore it, or I can be frustrated, or I can try to become one with somebody else. Now, what is necessary at this point? At this point, we need the left soul power. The left soul power is Gevurah, is strength. And strength is the ability to hold back, to discipline oneself. And in this context, it's could you make space for somebody else? Could you respect the other person's perspective? In other words, in a relationship, just as important as the desire to become one, you also have to realize that we are two people with two different perspectives, and can I see the world from the other person's perspective? And that's just as important a skill in a relationship as the desire to become one. And if you have one without the other, the relationship will not last in a healthy way, I should say. The Zohar, which is one of the primary books of the Kabbalah, explains that love and fear, what he calls love and fear, what we're going to label love and awe, love and respect, are really like two wings of a bird trying to soar upward. And to create a relationship is to create something spiritual, to lift oneself beyond the perspective of self, and to allow oneself to grow and connect to somebody else. To do so, you need two wings. And just like you wouldn't expect an airplane to fly with one wing, or you wouldn't expect a bird to fly with one wing, so too you would not expect a relationship to last with just the desire to become one, without the desire to see myself as two and to respect that. I respect that you're entitled to a perspective different than me. Again, I don't have to agree with your perspective, but I have to respect it. Now, this is true about spouses. It's also true about relationships between parents and children, or adults and their parents. I can love my child. I want to be one with them. What does that mean? I want my child to have all my hobbies. Wonderful. But do I respect my child? Do I understand that my child is somebody else and someone distinct and someone that has their own perspective? And I don't have to agree with that perspective, but I have to respect it. And these are the two soul powers. And it's not easy for someone who has a deep desire to love, a deep desire to become one with other people, very hard for them to feel that respect for the other person, respect their differences. And some people are very good at separation. I have a few friends, I ask them, how you doing? They say, we're doing wonderful. We love social isolation. We don't like talking to people. This is the best time in our life. We never had such a good time in our life. So some people are very good at boundaries. They want their own space. They respect other people's space. And they need more love in their life. They need more, they have to awaken the capacity, the soul power to feel the desire to become one with somebody else. So that's the love and that's the respect. Those are the two sort of most dominant soul powers and emotions within a person. If you think about it, the two most powerful emotions are love and hate. And love is you're attracted to something, and hate is you're running away from something. Something is making you uncomfortable. So you're drawing back to self. So that's similar to the idea of Gevurah, of separation, of making boundaries between you and the other thing. Now, hate is another whole discussion. What do I hate? What repels me? What doesn't repel me? What should repel me and does not? These are all important questions for this week, the week of Gevurah, the week of strength, of separation, and of boundaries. And we have a minute or two left. I'm going to talk about the third soul power. And after that, we'll open it up to questions. And here I'm willing to sit here all day. I have nowhere to go. It's quarantine. So if you have any questions, I could sit here all day long. But just to try to be at least close to the half an hour time frame that we put out there, let's think about the blend between the right side and the left side, the desire to become one and the desire to hold back. So on one level, compassion is the blend between the desire to give in an unlimited way and to hold back and only giving to one that's deserving. And I'm going to illustrate this. So suppose we have a discussion. Should we give this individual, whatever his name is, John Doe, should we give John Doe, should we give Yankel, let's call him Yankel, should we give Yankel whatever we want to give him? Should we give him the check? Now, because I have two soul powers, so we'll demonstrate it with two people. There's one person, A says, give Yankel the gift. Person B says, don't give Yankel the gift. Person A represents Chesed, the desire to give. Person B represents the desire for discipline, the desire to encourage someone to earn what they have. And now we have a discussion. Now the discussion works like this. Person A says, Yankel, we're going to give him. We give everybody. Everybody's deserving. Everybody's wonderful. Everybody's amazing. Person B says, I can't give Yankel. He's undeserving. Now, so we have both these urges within ourselves. Now, these two urges cannot speak to each other. Why can't they speak to each other? Because they're extreme. The right side sees good in everybody, and the left side, the judgmental side, sees perfection nowhere. Okay, so what do? So now you need an ability sort of to blend the two. And here's where compassion comes in. Compassion can have a little bit of giving and a little bit of holding back. Both could agree with compassion. Because compassion, number C, turns to number B, and he says, number B, you claim that nobody is deserving. You know what? I agree with you. The person is not deserving. However, he turns to number A. You say we give everybody because everyone's deserving. He says, no, I agree with you. We'll give it to him even though he's not deserving. Why are we going to give it to him? Because we have compassion on him. In other words, compassion does not require to see everybody as deserving. And in that sense, compassion is the ability to make the bridge between the right side and the left side. And I'm going to say, even though I'm going a little bit over time, I'm going to say one more point about compassion. And I said this in other places and other times, and this is actually very powerful. And that is that according to the Kabbalah, compassion has the ability to unlock love. Let's say I don't feel love to my child, or I don't feel love to my spouse, I don't feel love to my boss, and I want to awaken the love. I'm not saying you have to, but let's say you want to awaken the love. How do I do so? So according to the Kabbalah, the secret is compassion. There's a verse that says, Jacob redeems Abraham. Abraham is love. Jacob is compassion. How does this work? Okay, so I'll take 60 seconds, I hope, and try to illustrate this. So who do I love? I don't know the answer to that question, but I love a relatively small percentage of people. Okay, so there's 7.5 billion people in the world. How many people do I love? Small group, smaller than 7.5 billion. I also have to know somebody I love. Can I say, can you love someone who you never saw, you don't know how they look, you don't know anything about them? No, you can't love somebody like that. Okay, let's think about compassion. Compassion actually has a much broader circle. I'm walking down the street and I see somebody was hit by a car. I don't know who they are. I don't know their nationality. I don't know their belief system. I don't know if they're tall, short, good looking, horrible looking. I know nothing about them. All of a sudden, because they're in pain, all of a sudden, my soul, I feel connected to them. I feel empathy. Okay, so compassion is much easier to awaken. Says the Kabbalah, once you awaken compassion, compassion is like the bridge, the emotional bridge which connects you to the other person. And love is sort of a bridge that's not very sturdy. It's not easy for it to create a bridge, to cross the river and create a bridge between you and another person. But compassion is a much better bridge builder. However, once the bridge is built with compassion, what happens is now the love can flow. So I see a person, okay, he wasn't a bad person, I never liked that person. God forbid tragedy strikes, and all of a sudden I feel bad for that person. And you know what happens? When I stop feeling bad for the person, you know what I realize? All of a sudden I say, that Yankel that I knew my whole life, I didn't think he's such a nice, now I see he's actually a good person. Now I see I actually do have feelings for him. Now I see I do care about him. In other words, once the bridge of compassion is built, the love could then flow. And that's the power of compassion, empathy. And just to bring it out practically, I come home and my child is running around town, running around the house now, I should say, because we're in quarantine. And instead of getting frustrated, if I could see what's happening within my child, which is step number 2, then I could sense compassion, which is step number 3. So let's say I see my child and I say, why did he do this? He comes back from school, the teacher said he smashed the window. So I'm very upset. But then I realized that, something? My child is suffering. And if my child is suffering, all of a sudden, I feel close and I feel connected because that bridge of love was not there at that moment. But if I feel my child is suffering, the bridge of compassion is built. And if the bridge of compassion is built, I sense the suffering, all of a sudden the love will once again flow. It's true about children, true about spouses, true about any relationship. So this, I think, is in brief, at least a taste of the first 3 emotional attributes, which is kindness, the urge to give, the urge to become one, Gevurah, the urge to respect and make boundaries and separate and respect the other person's boundaries and have my own boundaries respected, and then compassion, which blends the two. And so hopefully we gave at least a brief taste of what this means within God's creative power, and then ultimately in our soul, which ultimately reflects those soul powers. So this is at least a taste for today. Tomorrow we're going to try to focus on the next 3, Netzach Yesod, the next 3, and the following day we'll focus on